To all the geeks and nerds out there, welcome back to another episode of Simply Minecraft. This is a series where we take various aspects of the game and we try and do them as simply and as easily as we can. Now, with the release of 1.17, I thought we could revisit this world, look at all the contraptions we've built so far, test them in 1.17.1 and make sure they work, and also add some tips and tricks and answer some common questions. So, let's get into it, shall we? First of all, let's look at this thing, the iron farm. You can see here we've got golems smelting up here. So yeah, let's take a look. So as you can see, it's working in 1.17.1. There is no changes needed. It should just work. But there have been some questions and some queries. So let's go over those. So first of all, I've had a few people report that this zombie stops bouncing. Now, I've not had that. I've had this world running for a long time, done a lot of testing, and also got the same setup in Legacy that's been running for around 7 months. And yeah, the mobs still bounce. So I'm not quite sure why people have seen that, but if you have, another way to do this that's a bit more reliable maybe is to use some soul sand. So the way to fix this, if you've already got this built up in your world, is to put a soul sand here, then get yourself a piston, put it next to it right here, put a button on the back of the piston, press it, and the soul sand then goes underneath. The zombie will fall down for a brief second, but now he'll bounce because of the bubble column. So now we can get rid of all the rest of this. We can get rid of all of that, get rid of that, and get rid of that. So now we just got a normal tube with soul sand on the bottom, and yeah, the zombie will bounce up and down just like that. The next question was regarding the golems falling out of this chamber. Now, if you've built it correctly, that won't happen. The problem here is that you've probably built it incorrectly is the issue here. So you'll notice on the floor here, we've got these glass blocks here and also along here. And that is the problem, probably. You've probably got solid blocks here rather than glass. So that is the fix. Make sure these are glass. Now, the reason for that is that golems will pick a block to spawn on. And of course, golems are bigger than one block. So if they were to pick this block, if this was a spawnable block and they pick this block, then part of their body will then be inside this block, and then because the water is flowing this way, they'll get pushed out of the chamber. So make sure that these blocks along here, these 4 and these 3 here, are glass. That means that golems won't pick these blocks to spawn on. They'll spawn on these blocks instead. Now on these blocks over here, it's not an issue because they may well pick this block here to spawn, for example, and part of their body will be inside this wall here. That's okay because the water flows this way, which pulls them out of the wall, and they are taken over here into the lava with this dude. So yeah, that is the fix. Make sure you've got glass blocks over here and not solid ones. The next question is, what if one side is working but another side isn't? So as you can see here, we've got one golem spawned over here and none over here. Now, sometimes that's how it works. So sometimes you will get one over here, sometimes one over here, sometimes you get 2 together. That's just the way it works. So if that's happening and your chests are filling up roughly the same, then there's not an issue. That's kind of normal operation. If you're finding that one side just isn't producing any golems at all, then you may have an issue. Now, there's 2 things to do in that front, and that's to understand that these guys will only spawn a golem if there's not another golem in range of them. And by range I mean, well, to keep it simple, I'm going to say 20 blocks around them. It's not quite that, but yeah, to keep things simple, make sure you look in a 20 block radius around all of these villagers and make sure there are no other golems. So one thing to think about is if you built this underground, for example, maybe there's a cave next door and these guys have spawned a golem in there, and of course then they're detecting that golem and so they won't spawn anymore. So have a good look around your area, make sure there are no other golems around. The other thing is that as I said, the detection range is around 20 blocks. It's a bit less than that actually, but to keep it simple, that's what I've said. But it's possible that these guys over here will detect the golem over here and then not spawn one, and that's just around some timing. So what you can do is, because the way it works is on a global clock, we can turn this thing off. So just block the line of sight from the golem, for the zombie, should I say, to the villagers, and block that for a couple of minutes. And then once you've done that, kind of leave it like that for a couple of minutes, and then turn it back on again. And then you should see, hopefully, that has rectified it, and you'll get golem spawning on both sides. Next up, let's look at our simple concrete maker, and as you can see, this is working just fine. So as with this design and all the designs we're going to see today, there is of course a link in the description to the original block by block tutorial and explanation of how this thing works. So this one, the simple one, is working fine. So let's have a look at the bigger one, the big boy over here, and see what this one does. I've tested this in 1.17 and I can tell you that it does work. So let me just show you. If I turn it on, we get our powder dispensed here. We can place it on this block just over here, and you can see it gets pushed along super fast, and then the pistons over there at the end push the blocks down. Then the TNT falls down, blows up the blocks, they fall into the water and then end up in these chests underneath. So everything works, no need to make any changes. So let me turn that off. Now, one thing I would recommend is that what I found at least is when I was using this, sometimes I wanted to get hold of these blocks over here that are kind of stuck in the system. Now, they will get pushed down when you do the next batch, so you're not losing any items, but sometimes you do want to get your hands on those items over there. So a quick and easy way to do that is add a ladder here, Come over here, add a separate block here so you can walk along, stand on these comparators, get yourself a trapdoor, place it on one of these pistons so you can open this, close it like that, and then you can easily get underneath here, mine these blocks out so you've got access to them. Before we continue, I'm going to let you know that I'm going to put this world as a world download in the description so you can grab everything here you've seen today and test it out for yourself. So when you do that, you'll spawn over here. This is the world spawn. And over here, we've got a bunch of buttons that will take us to all the farms that are not located in our starter villager area. So the first one we're going to go to is the flower farm. So press this button and we should turn up over here at the flower farm. And then to return back, there's always a button like this at all the farms to return back to home base. And here it is. As you can see, it's working just fine. Just turned it on and we are getting flowers as we need to. Now, all we need to do now is turn it off once you've left it running for a few minutes and the water comes across and flushes all the items into these hoppers over here. There is one thing you can do to maybe make it a little bit more optimized, and that is to add a layer of blocks here at this level. And what that does is it stops the tall grass from growing. So then you've got more chance of flowers growing rather than the tall grass, which is not something you need. We're now over at the Hoglin Farm, and as you can see, it is working just fine, and there's no real changes you need to make to this at all. Now, one thing that was pointed out that would make it a little bit easier to make is that instead of using the Nilium here, we can also plant the fungus onto grass, onto dirt, should I say. So instead of getting this block that you need Silk Touch for, you could just use dirt. So that would make this farm a lot easier to build in the first place. Next, we're over here at the witch farm. I've got a night vision potion on so we can see it. And as you can see here, the witches are getting pushed along and they're going to end up in these minecarts. So this one is working just fine as well. No changes are required. Next, let's take a look at the crop farm. Now, this works in 1.17. I've had it running and it works just fine. But there is one thing that we need to take into consideration, and that is this dude in the middle. And when I say in the middle, I mean exactly in the middle. This guy, for this to work with two sides, this guy here has to be exactly in the center of this block. Now, when I was testing that, that wasn't something that I really considered. I got this guy in the center and yeah, both farms just works. But it seems like if this guy is pushed over to one side a little bit, so for example, if this guy is over at this end, then this guy over here is too far away from him and they won't throw the crops to them because they're too far away. So there's a few things we can do to fix that. First of all, get yourself some ice. I've got some packed ice here, so if we come over here, take away this block and replace it with some ice. What that will do is when this guy comes over to talk to this guy, he will try and stop on the ice, but the ice will make it a bit more slippery and he'll slip this way, getting a bit closer to this villager. So let's test that. If I was to open this up, move this guy over to the side and then put that back again, let's see if we get any more potatoes, because this guy is a potato guy, this guy is a carrot guy. So let's empty all these chests and see what we get. And there you go, he has shared his potatoes, and if we look down in the chest, there they are coming on in. So this works just fine for both sides. So that is one fix, is to add some ice just underneath there, just like that. Another option, if you don't have access to ice, is to get this villager here in a minecart. Now, if you've taken him out of your villager breeder here, which we'll talk about a bit later on, you can leave him in the minecart. But yeah, if not, then add some rails underneath him, get your minecart, push it into place. It might not go in straight away, but if you give this a try a few times, he should hopefully, there we go, get inside the minecart. Then you can take all this stuff out, yeah, and he should be okay. If you do use a rail, I'd recommend leaving the rail in place underneath him and make sure it's in this orientation so he can't move this way or this way. He can only move that way, and that will guarantee that he's always in the middle of the block. Another issue that I heard from people was that the farmers weren't breaking any crops. That is most likely due to a game rule. So make sure that you've got this game rule, mob griefing, make sure that is set to true, and that will allow the villagers to break the crops. And here is our simple gold farm. As you can see here, it is working just fine. All the mobs are falling down onto the hoppers and we are getting all the gold. So again, no changes here required. You can just leave this farm as it is. Now, if you want to make a little bit of an improvement, what you could do is actually make the spawning platforms a little bit smaller. Maybe cut off these corners a little bit and add some more layers. The reason for that is it'll make it a bit more efficient, because then the zombies have, the zombie pigmen, should I say, have got a shorter distance to walk. And so by the time they spawn to when they die, that will be reduced. So that will make the farm a little bit more efficient. Now, I didn't do that originally just because I wanted to make it super simple for people to build, so it's nice and easy just to build a square rather than some kind of weird shape. But yeah, if you cut off the corners, that will probably help out as well and make it a little more efficient. Likewise with a crop farm, make sure you've got mob griefing turned on, otherwise the zombie pigmen won't want to trample on the turtle eggs in the center. And of course, these guys are not zombie pigmen anymore, they are zombified piglins. We all know that, of course. Why would we use the old-fashioned name? Next, we're over our super simple slime farm, and as you can see, this is working just fine. So here we go, he's a big boy over here. He goes over towards the golem, but yeah, he can't reach. So sometimes the golem does give them a whack. That's okay. It kills them a bit quicker, and they end up in the campfires under there, and there are hoppers underneath to collect the drops. So this doesn't need any changes. It just works just fine, just like the others. Now, there was one comment where people were seeing that this golem was getting attacked and was taking some damage and sometimes dying. Now, I've done a very long test of over 10 hours, and here you can see this golem. But look at his health, he's still at 100 health, so he's not lost any hit points of damage whatsoever after a very long test. So all I can say there is make sure you've built this farm correctly with the blocks in the right positions. If you've got some of these blocks over here too close to the golem, then maybe the slimes can jump from here over to here and get to him, but they shouldn't be able to reach him. I've done a lot of testing, and that shouldn't be an issue. Next, we're over our super simple with a skeleton farm, and as you can see here, it's working as well, just as before. So this doesn't need any changes. You can make it work just like this, but I do have a few tips of things you can do to make this a bit better. Tip number one is this carpet over here. I've used that to stop any mobs spawning on it, but to allow us to have the pack spawning in the center. One thing in the nether is that carpets burn. So especially if a ghast shoots the carpets, they can get destroyed very easily. So instead of carpets, I would use slabs over here just to make sure that they're not easily destroyed by any ghast blasts. And of course they remain, not spawnable. The next tip is that these walls here, I would build up a few levels. So rather than just have it one level like this to stop the mobs coming out, I would certainly make them a little bit taller like this. Now, the reason for that is that when you're in survival, if you're outside the farm here, you don't want the blazes shooting at you. So we had this running on Legacy, and one of the issues we had here that a certain team member, will remain nameless, Poppy, was over here, and a blaze was over there, tried to shoot Poppy, who was over here, and the blast actually managed to kill the piglin in the center. So to avoid that, to avoid the blazes shooting at you, then just raise this wall up a little bit to hide you from the mobs. A common comment I see is that people say that mobs don't spawn on slabs. Well, they do. They have to spawn on top slabs. So the farm here is built using top slabs. If we go underneath, you can see that these slabs are all top slabs. Now, the reason for that is that we want mobs to pathfind to these solid blocks that are outside the farm. That's how we get rid of the blazes and whatnot onto these cactuses. So or cacti, should I say. So yeah, mobs do spawn on slabs, but only on top slabs. So if you have a slab like this, then a mob will spawn on top of this, but a slab here, they will not spawn there. So yeah, they do spawn on slabs, and if they didn't, this farm wouldn't work at all. The next common comment I see is that nothing is spawning. Now, there are a few things to consider on that front. If you're on a multiplayer server and there are other people in the nether, then they may well be taking up the mob cap, and so there are no mobs for you in your farm. There's nothing we can do about that. That is just the way the game works. So run this farm AFK when other people aren't in the nether. That's one thing you can do. The other reason that you might not be getting any spawns here is because mobs are spawning elsewhere. So maybe even on a single player world, you need to make sure that you spawn proof the area correctly. So I covered this in the video originally, but just to recap it super quick, make sure you spawn proof all of the fortress blocks. So go through, find all of the nether brick, and make sure that's all spawn proofed in some way, either buttons, pressure plates, etc. Make sure you build this in a fortress that's inside a soul sand valley. That will help because you won't need to spawn proof any of these blocks outside of the fortress because of the way mobs spawn in this biome. And just make sure that if you scoot around the outside, don't forget the spawning radius from the player who is going to be AFK down there is a sphere with a radius of 128 blocks. So make sure you go out in all of those distances and make sure there aren't any other biomes. So for example, there may be like a crimson forest maybe over in this direction that's still inside that sphere, and a whole bunch of mobs might be spawning in that biome, filling up the mob cap. So you need to do a bit of exploratory work. You need to have a look around and make sure there's no other mobs taking up the mob cap. And here we have our super simple trading hall with the zombie discounts. There's our dude back there. There he is. And also nice and easy ways to get these villages into place using pathfinding. So let's give this thing a test and make sure people come in here. So we've got villages in all of the slots here, apart from this one right here with a workstation ready to go. We've got our villager over here in a minecart. So if we send him along, the minecart should get broken and he should get ejected. He should then walk all the way over to his workstation. There he is. You can see he's busy walking away, and he's into his slot. There we go. Now we can take a look at his trades. Obviously here he is. We can trade with him to lock those trades in, and we can also convert him. So let's drop him down, and if we move away so the zombie doesn't track us, then he should get converted. And now that he's been converted, we can lift him back up again. There he is. We can splash him, give him an apple, and he will turn back into a villager with some nice discounts. So as you can see, the trading hall works just fine. We don't need to make any changes, but there are a couple of tips that I can give you to make this a bit better. So first of all, if you want to get rid of your villagers, so probably there's a couple of ways to do that. So the first way is to just use a flint and steel. When they're inside their cells here, you can set the floor on fire. That will kill the villager, but won't count as a player kill, and so these guys won't get angry with you and affect their trades. So you might have to put down, so you just have to wait for this guy to die off. Let's get rid of the fire, and we can look at this dude, and you can see our trades are still unaffected. We've still got low trades from the discounts before, and once that guy disappears, then the box there opens up. But look at this. This is what I was worried about, is fire spread. So you've got to be careful, because if you use flint and steel, your trading hall can burn down if you're using flammable blocks. So I probably wouldn't advise that one. Probably a better way to do it would be to allow the zombie underneath to convert the villager, and then come in here and kill the zombie villager. And if you kill the zombie villager, that won't count as any kind of issue for these villagers, because as far as they're concerned, he's a zombie and our trades are unaffected. We still have the discounts. Another tip that is optional if you want to do it, and that is that if you want to speed up the time it takes a zombie villager to convert to a villager, you can add iron bars into your design. So you can add them underneath these slabs here. That's just fine. The zombie can still pathfind and see the villager once they're lowered down. I've tested that already. But basically, for a villager, imagine there is a 9 by 9 by 9 cube around them. So that's centered on their feet right there. So you can go 4 blocks up. So 1, 2, 3, 4 even, and imagine that's all around the villager. The more iron bars there are, basically, the more chance there is of the curing time to be reduced. So if it fits in with your design, then add some more iron bars around, but just make sure that it doesn't impede the zombie underneath, and make sure the zombie can still see the villagers. Now, speaking about speeding things up, if you want the time it takes the zombie to convert the villagers into zombie villagers a bit quicker, then give him a sword and make it as strong as you can. So I've got this netherite sharpness 5 sword. Now that is pretty good. Now he'll pick that up. There we go. Now it doesn't have to be netherite. Of course, I've taken it to the extreme there, but the sharpest and the most powerful sword that you can spare, give that to your zombie, and when he tries to convert the villagers, it would happen a lot quicker. Let's bring this guy down here, see how many hits it takes. It shouldn't take that many. There we go, just 2 hits and he is done. Very good. I should also mention, as I did in the original video, that this only works if you're in hard mode. So if you're in hard mode, then there's a 100% chance for villagers to convert to zombie villagers, so you won't lose any of your villagers. But if you're on easy or normal, then there's a chance that, if the zombie attacks your villagers, they will die and disappear. So be careful what level you're playing on when you're doing this kind of conversion. To reiterate from the original video, if you want to cycle the workstations of these villagers when they're in place, probably the best thing to do is to put a slab on the top of the workstation, just like that. Then, of course, you can break the workstation, place it down again, and look at the new trades up here. You still get access to the villager from up here. Now, there is another way to do it, which may work out as well, is that if you add a wall underneath the workstation, the villager still can't get out, but you can place the workstation back again. He'll receive it, and just like that. Now, one thing to watch out for, if you have another workstation somewhere else that isn't taken, this villager can still think he can pathfind out and can take that workstation. So just be careful of that, just to make sure. But if you just have it set up like this, then he should be good. And finally, let's take a look at our super simple villager breeder that's automatic, where they just keep breeding infinitely. It has an on and off switch, has a baby sorter, and then has a easy pickup system onto minecarts for the adults over here. So let's make sure this works in 1.17. And here we are, we can see some hearts coming in. Just turn the farm on for a few minutes and hopefully we should see a baby popping out any second. And there he is, there is the little one. We have a baby. So the breeder works just fine. So let's make sure the baby makes it through the system properly. Here he goes, he's walking towards his bed, and yes, he falls down into the water stream just as before and ends up on the cobble wall. Okay, so when he grows up, he will be big enough for his head to go into this water stream that pulls him over this way and into the chamber with the rest of the villagers. And there we are, a baby just grew up and is ended up here in with the rest of the villagers. So we can see that worked, and obviously there's a few more babies here that have come in since the first one. These parents up here have been busy. So yeah, we've got some babies here. So as you can see here, the system is working. Let's just make sure it's working totally. So if we come over here and press this button, we can make sure that the pickup system still works. Yeah, it does. There we go. Our villager is now off to where we need him. So confirmation that this breeder works in 1.17.1. You can just see it there. I've not changed anything about it. It works totally fine. There's a couple of things and a couple of gotchas that we can cover now to make sure this works for you in all situations. So first of all, I've heard reports that these babies can fall through the gap here between the wall, and actually they are small enough to fit through here. So I've never seen it myself, but it can happen that if the babies push each other around, they can get pushed right into the corner and then end up falling through in between the blocks. Even if you surround this with other blocks, they still are small enough to fit through. So a wall like this is 1.5 blocks high in terms of its hitbox. You can see here this baby is standing here at this position. So what we actually want to do here is what will make it better is if we just swap out and add a slab on top. So if we break this block here, add a slab on top, we can get rid of the wall now. Place this back here, and this will work just the same as before. So this baby, he's jumping up, getting pushed by the water, and he will make it on top of that slab eventually, and the rest of the system will still work. So if you're losing, there we go, there he is standing there. So if you found that you lose babies through the gaps, then add a slab here, and that will fix the problem. The next issue is angry particles. So you can see here these villagers are in love mode. You can see the hearts here, but they will create some angry particles any second now. Just got to wait for that to happen. And there we go. So why does that happen? Why do some people get the angry particles? Well, I've actually turned the farm off, so there is no way to pathfind to these beds, and that is a problem. If you're seeing angry particles, it means that the villagers don't think there's a path to a valid bed. So we can turn this on, and that will fix the problem for us. But if you're still seeing that, even though you've got your farm switched on, it means there's a pathfinding issue. So there are a couple of things to mention. Make sure, first of all, there are 2 air blocks above all the beds. So 1, 2, they need to be air, then you can have your roof at that level. So make sure there are 2 air blocks above all of the beds. That's the first thing. Second thing is make sure you don't have blocks above here, for example. So again, imagine that these trapdoors are open. This is where the villagers think they can walk. If the trapdoor is like that and the villager is actually standing there, he can't get out over here because there's not enough room. So again, make sure that there's enough room here. So make sure there's no block here. If you want to add some blocks around here, you can do it like that. That will work. There's enough space for the villager to think he can walk through, just like that. So just make sure you got that there. I have seen people spread these beds out. Now I have never seen that. I don't think that's required. I think that is again to fix a pathfinding issue. By adding space around beds, it means that the villagers can find their way around. But I think it's probably more likely that you've got blocks in the way that means that villagers can't can't make their way over to the beds. A last couple of tips to make sure your breeder is working just fine. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time for the first villagers to come out. Now the reason for that is that the farmer villager needs to harvest enough crops for himself and his partner over there to have enough to breed. So they need to have 12 carrots or potatoes each. Make sure you only use carrots or potatoes in this farm. You can't use wheat or beetroots. It won't work that way. So carrots and potatoes only. And yeah, you just have to wait for a little bit before they start producing babies. It will take a little bit of time to start with. Once they've started producing babies, they will produce 2 babies per day. That's what we've got set up here. Now the other thing to think about is you want to make sure that these villagers don't have anything in their inventories. So if they've already got a bunch of crops in their inventories, they might not pick up any more crops. So what you might want to do is make sure you've got some that just work out to start with. But if you're having problems, then try and swap them out for some newly bred babies to make sure their inventories are empty. Also, like we said, for the crop farms over there, make sure that mob griefing is on. So the villagers here can actually break the crops and harvest them. And if you do that, you should be good. So there we have it, and that villager just grew up as I press record, so the slab works. You can just see it there. But yeah, there we go. We've reviewed all of the farms that we've made in the Simply Minecraft series so far to make sure they all work for 1.17, in which they do. There's a few tips there, as I showed, for improving things here and there if you're having issues. So yeah, I hope that was useful. Now there are going to be some more Simply Minecraft episodes coming. I've been busy designing some new simple farms that have plenty of functionality and are relatively efficient, but obviously not super efficient because, you know, so with simplicity comes some trade-offs. But if you're interested in more of those kind of designs in some different things, then make sure you're subscribed because those episodes are coming soon. Hope you enjoyed the episode, and if you did, then please hit the like button, and if you're new, then feel free to subscribe, and if you've got any comments or suggestions, then get in that comment section. Alright my geeks, till next time, I will see you later.